Welcome back to the 2025 Tire Rack One Lap America, presented by Grassroots Motorsport Magazine, with coverage brought to you by HP Tuners. Bryan and I have the distinct pleasure to be joined today by the Beachems. We have Doug and Jack, or Doug Jr., or whatever way you want to call yourself today. Gentlemen, why don't you say hello?
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone.
So, Doug, I'm just going to say Doug and Jack to make things easy for the purposes of our viewers here. Doug is the big one. Jack is the less big one in the video here, but they are both one lappers. And actually, Doug has a distinction of being a cannonballer as well. So, Doug, why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about your history with the event, and then why you drug your son into it, and then your history with the event.
All right. Well, I mean, going back, I met Brock, back in the 70s. And I had a customer of mine and an old dear friend, Bobby Rensler, who was at that time racing the 917 Can-Am Porsches. And he introduced me to Brock. And so I followed Bobby racing. He took me to the 24 Hours of Daytona back in the 60s. 66, 67, 68. And then we started going to Sebring, and I became a fan. And so anyway, he had introduced me to Brock, and I had gotten to know him. When it came time for the 79 Cannonball, two people were left out at the last minute, Brocker and me. And evidently, as the story went, Bobby Rensler got a phone call Brock and told Brock that my family really would rather I didn't do this silly ass thing. And so I got left at home. Brocker got left at home. And so we go down a few years, one lap starts, and he has this idea. And so we were in from day one. I was in from day one. And the 84 event was very interesting. Ended up renting cars, this sort of thing. So I guess I ran 84 and 85. And then 86, I believe I did not start. I was there, and we couldn't put everything together. And then a couple of years went by, and I came back, and then I guess it was in 87, I won Seat of the Pants there again in a rental car with two people I'd never met. And we were doing the time rallies, and I don't know how we won, but we didn't have any of the computers or anything, and we won Seat of the Pants. And then I laid low for a few years. And then Brock called me, and he said, I've got a new motorhome McDonald's has given us, and I'm going to drive it around one lap. Come join me. And so I flew up, and I did that particular one lap in the Newell. So there were, I think, 4 of us in the Newell motorhome. And doing one lap in the same vehicle as Brock Sr. was a whole different experience, and kind of a history lesson of the United States, as well as the car talk and everything else. But it was really more like being at school. Had a great time. And when we got done that year, he said, why don't you come help us? And I said, all right. And so at that point in one lap, they were starting to go to the tracks, and you had one team. And so the team would go to the track. And so, we're, say, at Road America, and everybody got done. And then they downloaded the information, and they sent it back to headquarters. And then my job was to get the head timer to the next event before everybody. And if you really think about that, they have two
That's
teams now so they can leapfrog each other. And so we're telling everybody to behave on the street and everything else, but I just gave everybody, a 6 hour head start, and I have to get there first. So it was a very entertaining 3 or 4 years that I did that.
and just to be
Um,
clear and to clarify why this is such a thing, because now our total event mileage is not what it was then. So I mean, at that time, your total event mileage was in the 9,000s, if I'm not mistaken, roughly eight to
yeah,
nine
eight,
thousand. Yeah,
8 to 9,000. Yeah,
yeah. So you're
eight.
looking at between 8 to 1,200 mile transits at every
Right,
juncture, right?
right,
So
right.
this is not
And
this is not a 6 hour, 8 hour drive to the next track. This is a
no, no, no,
we're
no,
going
no.
right. Yeah.
And then whoever's with me was I'm having a brain fart and and can't remember all the names and everything, but we I was basically his driver, and that was my job, was to drive the transients and get him there before everyone. So we did this for a number of years, and then it kept evolving. And then they realized they needed to have more than one crew and this sort of thing. And at that time, I bowed out again and retired, and but continued to follow the event, continued talking to Brocker and Brock when things would come up, and just to say hello. And Brock also wrote for Boating Magazine, and I was in the boating industry all my life. And so he and I had a second passion, the boating industry, and he was restored an old Donzi. I was a Donzi dealer. So anyway, we had all been good friends for a number of time. So it came up that the 40th anniversary was coming up, and in what 2014. And so my son said, we ought to do this. And okay. And so we called Brocker up and said we were wanting to come. And I called Pam and I said, we want to do something for Brock. And so she said, well, donate some money to the Alzheimer's Association. And at that time, he wasn't doing well at all. And so I said, okay. So Jack and I started the Brock Yates Memorial Fund, at that time, the Brock Yates Tribute Fund. And that was our first year that he and I ran together. And then I guess we ran, what, 3 or 4.
Parts of 14, parts of 15 before Charles came in.
Right.
And then you'd ride with the staff.
Right. And so in the years that he was running an aerial Latham, his co-drivers couldn't always get there in a timely fashion, and Brocker insisted that it'd be two people in the car for safety reasons. And so I would run with Jack until his driver would show up, usually on Sunday night.
Mhm.
And then I would jump in the car with Brocker or with one of you guys, and would go from there. And so that's really been my involvement. Been a long time. Met a lot of wonderful people over the years, and we've gotten some money for the Alzheimer's Association. So that's basically my history.
Well, you're being a little bit. I'd say we're not being quite as boisterous as we should be. So you say you've raised some money, but here I've got. I believe this is. Yep, here we go. So right now we are up to $180,000 since you started this for the Brock Yates Memorial Fund. That's
Yes.
no small feat. That's something pretty damn incredible, quite frankly, and something that I know we're going to be adding to this year because again, the Brock Yates Memorial Fund, the official charity of the One Lap of America, and while we're happy to have everybody has their own causes, this is our main one, right? But that's quite the feat. So you definitely deserve to be applauded there. So before I let Bryan kind of tear into you, because I know this is something he's been waiting for as well. You know, there we go. So there's two. So I want to go back to what you were talking about riding with Brock Senior. So I've often heard, and when I used to go with him to just around the Thousand Islands area in upstate New York, and I've heard oftentimes that he would stop at every single roadside plaque. Doesn't matter the historical plaques. Doesn't matter if he was in a rush. It doesn't matter what the time importance was, but he would stop and read all of them because you were saying that it was sort of a history lesson.
Yes.
That he would always stop and see what happened there, and that would kind of go into his compendium of stuff that he would either write about or reference later. Did you notice that at all?
Well, where we were going, he had actually already been because they did the pre-route thing. And so he and Brocker or whoever was with him, Steve Smith, whoever, got to read the signs. By the time we were going around in the Newell motorhome, he was just teaching us what he had already learned about the signs. And you know, and very, very interesting things, you know, why there are no big trees left, because, you know, the British Empire needed them for mast. And so they cut down all the friggin' trees and doing this. So the history lessons were something I wasn't expecting, actually. And then you got so used to them that you kind of waited with bated breath, you know, what are we going to find, you know, what new adventure do we have here? And it wore off on me because I ended up doing similar things with my family, and they would call them Dad's Great Adventures. And you know, I'd tell them to sit down, shut up, and learn. And you know, I did it to him on the road to Hana in Hawaii.
That was probably the best one because it was an audio tape that you bought from a gas station, and he was outrunning the tape. And so we were learning about this stuff after we had already passed it.
Yeah, I was maybe driving faster than they had anticipated when they were doing the tape. It was a very curvy road. We were in a rental car, which has always kind of been my specialty. And
we've had experience with that, haven't we?
Yes, we
with
have.
rental cars and curvy roads and some videos.
Oh, exactly. I mean, what was that famous line? Trying to keep up with you, and in the Smoky
Even the birds are
Mountains,
jumping out of the way or something.
Oh no, I said this damn thing is pushing, and we were in a Toyota Camry, and I sucker's pushing. Yeah, I said it's almost like, and Jack looks at me, goes, "It is front wheel drive." And well, I don't know what Toyotas. I don't drive Toyotas and everything. And I go, no wonder it feels like a piece of crap. It's front wheel drive. And
brought to you by Toyota.
Doing too bad hanging the tail end out, Dad. And but I was chasing you through that. Yes.
That was a good time. All right, Bryan, go for it.
The funniest line from that video was Jack going, "I wish I was in my Mini," and Doug goes, "I wish I was in my Porsche."
Yeah.
Reopening old wounds. Why don't we?
I had to.
All right, Bryan, go for it.
So Jack, one of my favorite stories that I've heard you tell many people over the years was the time that you asked Senior to teach you how to drive fast. What was his answer?
Oh, so we were at the 50th anniversary for Car and Driver, and Mr. Yates, if please sign my copy of Cannonball, and if you have any time, I'd love for you to talk to me about Fast Driving 101. And he, signs it. Wish you had been there, Brock. And then goes, why don't you just ask your dad? He was the best I ever taught. And just slowly turned and looked at him like, what the hell haven't you been telling me all these years? So coming back from IRP, we stopped at a Steak and Shake, and he had his Lienfelter Suburban, and he just laid out the ground rules, put the cruise control on 90, Keep your eyes up, listen for the radar detector to go off. Don't use your turn signal to change lanes. Don't swerve through traffic. Try to be invisible. And we got back in the truck, and he fell asleep and woke up somewhere in Tennessee. And it was a hell of a run.
It was a lot of fun.
And Mom was pissed.
I had promised his
You're not supposed
mother
to
that
tell.
I would not take him to racetracks and would not tell him about the evil things that I do. And I had already corrupted him with boating, and she wasn't real happy with me letting him go out on boats and have boats and this sort of thing when he was very young. And so the car thing was just absolutely taboo. And once Brock, made that comment, he came home and asked his mother. And so that was the end of it. And at that point, he had missed years of karting and everything else because I wasn't allowed to do that. And so we kind of jumped in with both feet at that time. And once we had permission, or sort of permission, and so at that time is when he started to go to Skip Barber and this sort of thing, and then I'd go along with him. But I know he went to Audi driving school, teen driving school. He was 15, wasn't even 16 yet, and I'm the only father that signed up. Everybody else dropped their kids off, and I stayed. And why are you staying? Well, I'm in the school too. Well, he didn't like that, so he sat at the other end of the room, and he wasn't real happy with me being there. And then on the second day, we split up into two groups and did autocross, and they gave me a group, and the instructor had a group, and we won.
Mm-hmm.
And amazing how that worked. And then all of a sudden, he realized I maybe wasn't as dumbass as he thought I was. And from that point on, everything.
Is that when you realized he was, though?
Everything kind of changed at that point. And the interesting thing is that a couple of years later, we were at Porsche in Leipzig at the factory. And I said, don't be disappointed. You just turned 16. If they don't let you out on the racetrack, don't worry about it. You can still ride along. And they asked him if he'd ever been to driving school. And he said, the Audi driving school at Road Atlanta. And they said, that's one of ours. Sign here.
There you go.
And I go, huh? And next thing I know, they've let him loose in a GT2 on the track. And
every 16-year-old needs.
Which every 16-year-old needs to. In fact, I'm the one that spun the damn car out. He didn't, and which made it even worse. So
I'm very glad you've been successful in keeping him away from motorsport, because he does nothing with it at Chin Track days now. He does nothing with it with the one lap at all. I mean, this is, it hasn't defined him whatsoever over these years. So it's worked really well.
Yeah, I don't think his mother, was real. She's still not real pleased, with the whole thing. But she's, finally realized that it is what it is, and you go from there. So.
One of my favorite videos is him getting Laura in the car at Road Atlanta and taking her around and scaring the bejesus out of her.
But who did she blame?
I'm not getting into that.
No, but if you listen to the video, she curses me the whole time.
As she should.
It was my fault.
As she should. She's put up with you a long time.
That she has.
Laura deserves a medal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, there's no question about that. I don't think there's any question about that. So, but she's lived to put up with us, and she's actually gotten really good about watching him and not freaking out too bad. There are a couple of times she has to get up and leave, but yeah, it is what it is.
So let's go back to story time for a minute here and walk us through, because you've got some. I doubt very many people have photos like this. that they can turn around and say,
Rocky
I was with
Aoki.
Rocky Aoki, right? Exactly. And you were at that time an escort, apparently, or you were just running the radar detector stuff, one of the two. It was nice of you to advertise. But tell us about the time, the place, the experience, because I mean, this is something that not a lot of people are going to understand. A lot of the guys watching this who are, 30 years old to 40 years old would know his son Steve, but not Rocky. So tell us about this a little bit.
Well, there again, there's a people that have fast cars have boats. It's the same clientele, and so Rocky was an offshore powerboat racer, and so I had met Rocky with offshore powerboat racing. In 1985, John Henry Falk, an old friend of mine, was one of my co-drivers, and he actually was on the American Powerboat Association board of directors, I think, at one time, and he was an offshore racer and lived in South Florida. So John and I go way back. That's who I would go to Sebring to meet. I'd fly in and he'd pick me up at the airport, and so we go way back. And so I knew a lot of these people ahead of time, and whether they were building boats or racing boats or whatever. And it's really, like I said, it's a close group. And Rocky's, Rocky was crazy. I mean, he was crazy funny. And he would do silly things. And the silly things that you see in the movie were generally things that Rocky did, showing up in Rolls Royces or showing up, with
Stretched
limos.
Porsches, yeah, right.
Yeah, things like that, and that's what he enjoyed doing. And so when you had characters like that, it's what made it. And in the movies, you take all the different characters that you had, and then they would, try to fluff them out. But Rocky was one of the many people. I mean, Gene Lindemood did silly things, back then, and who was she? She was running with Parnelli Jones in a van, and so there were a lot of people like that other than Rocky that were involved over the years.
That's astounding. I mean, I could sit here all day and listen to stories, but Bryan, why don't you go ahead?
So, speaking about the movie, tell us about filming the Scarab meets houseboat scene on Lake Lanier.
It's
There you go.
There we go.
They came to us and said they were going to be doing some filming, and they needed the marina. And so we actually shut down the marina, and this is not a small marina. This is a 1,400 slip marina. It's a big marina, and so we shut down portions of it and helped them do some filming. And they were looking for fast boats, and so we had Ed Estes had a 39 Scarab. Ed's father was Pete Estes, the president of General Motors. And so, as I said, the cars and the boats go, back and forth. And so the blue Scarab was Ed's. And then they brought in Belly Dancer, which was another 39 here on the lake. And because it had the flashy name on the side, that's the one they wanted to use. The other boat looked too normal. But anyway, the whole idea was that they were out playing with boats, and then there's an accident, and they run into the houseboat, and then they end up in an ambulance, and they get the idea to run an ambulance in the Cannonball. So they were here for 5-6 days, and I would take the boat out, the houseboat out, and had all these bikini-clad girls on board, and then we would do some filming, and it was some tough filming. I mean, I have to
It
I
sounds
have
like
to tell you, yeah. And
things you have to
and
do.
so, and this is what we did, and the people, they had their motorhomes and everything at top. And the first day I walked down the dock, I noticed that Brock is sitting down on one of the fingers on the dock, and he's writing. And I went over and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "They keep changing the script." So he was literally writing and changing the script as we're going through it.
Wow.
And they'd come up with new ideas and this sort of thing. And it was a great experience. The only bad experience we had during that was Farrah's bodyguards. If you went up to Farrah, if she was walking off the dock and you went up and said anything, the bodyguards would pretty much almost throw you in the lake and get you out of the way. And Dom DeLuise would sit on the front of one of the boats and make fun of them. And he was like having another pal there. And, Bert would come down with his entourage and his bodyguards. Farrah would come down. And then Dom would sit there and take a sip of whatever he was drinking. And he goes, "Well, I guess we have to go back to work now. These other people are here." And Dom DeLuise was probably the hit of the whole deal, because he just sat down and became everybody's buddy.
That's awesome.
There again, stuff that you'll never forget. And he also was the one that would facilitate if you really wanted the pictures. My mother wanted a picture with Burt Reynolds, and so he went up to Burt and told Burt, and Burt stopped everybody, grabbed my mother and father, got a picture, and my mother kept it in her house, until the day she died. But the only way to get to Burt was Dom had to do it. So if you wanted anything done, you had to go to Dom DeLuise, and he would be the one that would work it out for you.
That's astounding. I mean, it's just the stories, the rich tapestry you've got is just it's really incredible, and it's a pleasure to chat. But as we kind of start honing in on the ending of this one, and I'd love to have you back again for some more stories and chat about this. But as we come to the close of this one, obviously, so you guys started coming back in the 30th year, right? And now we're up to, what are we, 42 now, Bryan?
41.
41. Yeah. Okay. So the event obviously going through a few more transformations again, from where it was at the beginning to where it is now and where you see it going in the future. What is your, first of all, I'll ask, what is to you the importance of the event? And then where would you like to see it in another 40 years or in another 20 years? Where do you envision it?
Well, I like the idea of longer transients. It's the original one lap was Connecticut. It was go to Boston, turn left, go to Seattle, turn left, go to San Diego, turn left, go to Miami, and then return to Darien. And it was a joke that they handed out in 1984 at the first one. And they gave us better instructions, but those were basically the instructions. And the long transients were fun. And I don't mean 500, 600 miles, which is what everybody's used to now, more like, 1,000, 1,200, this sort of thing. And so to me, the long transients were always, the important thing. And it also gave you time to catch up, which you had to do if you were driving the official cars and everything. So that's one thing I would like to see. I understand why it changed, but going through all the different ways that one lap was held, I think that the track, the way it's done now, is a good way, and I think it's worked out well over the years. The only thing I would change really would be the transients, and make it longer, and that way you're not always going to the same tracks and this sort of thing.
Excellent. Jack, I'll ask you, you've done this a bunch of times, often in things that you probably wish you wouldn't have at the time, but afterwards, I'm sure now it's fun. But, what about you?
I agree with him. As far as the transients go, longer drives have been more fun, even in a sketchy car. It really would make you think of, surviving and overcoming anything that pops up. They, almost everyone breaks stuff on the transits, and so if you add another 500 miles to one of those, you're really opening up the opportunity to see how amazing the competitors are, the camaraderie that everyone has, stopping, taking hours out of their day, to help somebody out to make sure they make it. And I think that would just, increase the amount that you saw that exponentially, because we're all going to start breaking down, or we're all going to start driving more reliable cars, which sounds a little boring to me. I'd like to see, if you're going to do the longer trips, to put like epic drives and epic places, back on the map. Go up Pikes Peak, go up Castle Rock if you still get there. Some of these wonderful hill climbs that we have around the United States be really, really fun. Or point to point, little rally stages or something. I mean, there's some weird stuff that you could do, and that because we've all seen the picture of the Diablo on the dirt track. Bring some of the what the hell back into one lap.
Mm-hmm.
And one lap should be as crazy as the people who think it's fun and want to do it every year. We've got to keep them on their toes.
I think that's a great way of putting it. And I hear the campaign for One Lap 26, a return to Delirium. We're going to definitely work on that one as we move forward. Gentlemen, we could really stay here all day chatting with you, but it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to talk with you. Doug and Jack, thanks for making the time today. Again, it's just astounding, the history, and we look forward to having you back at some point talking about it some more.
Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate you listening to us, and we'd like to get over 200,000 with the Brock Yates Memorial Fund. So I would like to also say that that amount of money would not have been possible without Ed Bolian helping tremendously and bringing in the new Cannonball people. And when all that started, they didn't know where they fit in and this sort of thing. And I think that now they realize that we're all the same. We're just doing it a little differently. But a big, big shout out to Ed and all of his people, because they're the ones that brought in the big money. We've been scratching to try to do 5, 10, maybe 15,000 a year or something. And he really, really changed the way people were donating, and we're forever grateful for him for that.
No doubt. So Ed, over at VinWiki, thank you very much. So yeah, that'll wrap up this one. But for the 2025 Tire Rack One Lap of America, presented by Grassroots Motorsport Magazine, with coverage brought to you by HP Tuners, I'm Solomon and Bryan, and we got the Beachems with us. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks for joining us. Take care.
Y'all take care.
Thanks.
Very. Whoa! I crashed my tractor.